welcome into Raptors today. After another controversial night on the West Coast, the Toronto Raptors fall to the Los Angeles Clippers 108-100 in regulation. I'm Akil, Augustine, joined as always by Sherman Hamilton, and we must welcome Noor Zainab to the casting crew. How you doing?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me. I'm actually starstruck a little bit right now, so if I take a little bit to warm up, I'm sorry.
Akil does that to people.
I was going to say it's Sherman, but let's talk about the actual stars of the day, and that's the Toronto Raptors. We'll get into Fred VanVleet's comments a little later, but first off, we got to talk about that second half. After a strong first half performance, Noor, I'll start with you. Things fell apart in that second half. What did you see that changed for the Toronto Raptors there?
I think with the Raptors, the theme has been pretty much the same. It's the lack of urgency and the lack of creative offense. And even though they won the first quarter there, it was 17-25 for the Raptors, it should have been way more, in my opinion. Because if you're leading by that much and you're causing turnovers, I think they had 6 turnovers in the first quarter, that should not have been a single-digit lead in the first quarter. That should have been a double-digit lead going into the second quarter, bringing your bench in there so that you have somewhat of a standing going into the going into halftime. But that never changed. The urgency never changed. The shots that they were making were based off of turnovers. They weren't really creations that they were looking to make through half court. And then we saw how when you're not getting those turnovers and you're not getting that that transition offense, you can't bank on that the whole game. And then when you're watching the offense happen, it's pretty much hero ball. It's one guy has the ball, it's stagnant offense, the ball isn't moving. And if you watch a good team play basketball offensively, the point is to have the ball to go find the ball, not have the ball come find you. What you watch a lot of the time the Raptors are playing, is they're on the perimeter and just kind of like chilling and waiting for the ball to get to them. But you have to move your feet. Like, you're not a tree. You can move around. You can catch the ball, I think that's what they're missing, and we haven't seen that happen pretty much this entire season so far.
Coming out firing, Sherm.
Noor chose violence today.
Sorry, guys.
She chose violence. I will say this. The first quarter, to me, the Raptors played kind of what we're used to seeing them do. Turn a team over, score in transition. You mentioned the turnovers. They scored 9 points off the 7 turnovers in that first quarter. But there was an issue. Kawhi Leonard was very efficient in that first quarter, and he had 9 of the 17 points for the Clippers. So what you saw was him being able to stabilize it for the Clippers. The second and third quarters is where it went sideways. The Clippers ran them down, tied it at half, and then started to take control in that third quarter where they shot over 62% from the floor. So we're seeing a constant defensive deterioration throughout the middle quarters. And they're still in the game, though. Mm-hmm. They're still in the game at that point. And now we're seeing too many times where officials have a part to do with it.
Yes,
we know that.
Very much so.
But there is a breakdown that's happening with this team late in games that they've got to rectify very quickly. We saw it in Denver. They had a chance to win that game. They were up in that fourth quarter. The officials kind of tinkered with it, but they still could have won that game. Same thing we saw against the Clippers. They brought the game down again. They got the score down and weren't able to close the distance. So it was another game where we saw them put themselves in position on the road. Like, what's the recipe? Hang around, and just try and eke it out at the end. They were in that situation again, and they still weren't able to do it. So there are some concerns about execution in the late game stages.
You mentioned that Raptor recipe. They want to win the field goal attempts. They did 96-71. They want to win the rebounds, offensive rebounds. Yeah. And they want to have the fewer turnovers. They did that, but somehow things got away from them. Let's talk about that fourth quarter, because you mentioned they lost it in the second and the third. In the fourth quarter, Sherm, Scottie Barnes made his presence really known, and he's kind of turning into a force in that fourth quarter. Talk about the maturation of this young man, especially on a team where there are guys higher on the pecking order than him, but he seems to be the one that impresses the fan base.
Yeah, before I get to that, you mentioned some important things. The Raptors had 25 more field goal attempts.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
They had less turnovers. But if you allow a team to shoot 54% when you're shooting around 40%, it neutralizes that, right?
And get into the bonus early.
And get into the bonus. And there was a huge discrepancy from a free throw attempt perspective in the game as well. So the Raptors did check a lot of their boxes, but those boxes didn't really make any adjustments for the fact that you're defensively allowing this team to score too easily. As for Scottie to me, he's impacting the game late, but my question would be, how can we get that going throughout the first 3 quarters? How can we get the consistency for Scottie to be playing with that kind of urgency when he's on the floor earlier in the game? He's been great in the last 2-4 quarters. He got tossed against Denver, but he was very good in that fourth quarter as well. I like his aggression. I like his ability to score assists, just be an all-round player. But that has to happen more consistently, and I think that's where Scottie's going to grow as a young player and figure that out as he moves on.
And I think it's kind of almost, I would say, it's a good thing that he does it in the fourth quarter, because if you look around the league with young players, they kind of have a better game in the first three quarters because the pressure is not as much there. The noise of everything gets canceled out because everything gets focused on the fourth quarter. So as much as it's kind of frustrating and annoying to see that he only comes up in the fourth quarter, it's very nice to see that he's not afraid of the lights. And even if he's not playing well the entirety of the game, he doesn't let that stop him. He's not hanging his head down. He's like, okay, I understand I haven't played to my best level, but the fourth quarter now is where I have to shine. So watching that level of confidence in a young guy, to me, is very nice because it bodes well for your future and for a guy that you kind of want to be the center of your franchise. So I'm happy in that way, but I think if you can do this in the fourth quarter, I know you can do it in the first three quarters too, So.
All right. Well, our woman on the scene, Savannah Hamilton, was in Los Angeles last night, and she had some comments about Fred VanVleet. We'll talk more about Fred VanVleet later in the show, but right now we hand it off to Savannah Hamilton.
Thanks, Akil. Now, despite the loss, it was a tough game, but, Fred VanVleet, he's been such a leader since he's been back. Obviously, not his best showing tonight, but he's just been so dominant in facilitating the ball and just adding some more calm to the storm with the Raptors over the past road trip here, of course. But let's talk about International Women's Day, because he did tell me about what it means to be a girl dad. He said that he grew up really without a dad or a father figure in his life like that, so he knows how important it is to have a strong relationship, especially with his daughters, because he said that a lot of successful women that he knows have had great relationships with their dad, and although that's not the catalyst of success per se, it certainly does help, and so he wants to foster that with his kids. And one of his oldest daughter, Sana, well, she loves it when he ties her ponytail, so that's a skill that I have to admire.
All right, time to look forward for this Toronto Raptors as they fall 2 games straight on this road trip, now 1-2, and you think about looking forward, they've got the 5th toughest schedule according to the stats coming up. And I want to ask you guys about the pressure that's mounting now on this group. Noor, I'll start with you. Is it must-win time as we wind down the clock on this season?
I think this is the most pressure I've seen a Raptors team have in a very long time, and it's because of what we've seen this entire season so far. The craziest part to me with this team is they're the same exact guys as last year. So what is really missing? And if anything, you added more pieces onto your team now to make them more complete, and Jakob Poeltl, Will Barton coming off the bench. So those things should be helping you, and I'm not sure why that's not equating to anything right now, but watching Masai pretty much bet on this core. We saw what happened at the trade deadline. Pretty much the entire league was salivating at the mouth trying to get one person of the core, anybody that they can go and grab from the Raptors, but nothing amounted from that. If anything, we became buyers instead of sellers. So a lot of pressure is on this team. A lot of pressure is on these guys who want to now go in the season, in the offseason, get paid in Fred VanVleet, Jakob Poeltl, Gary Chen. So whatever they do now is going to bode well for their future. So if they're going to be playing well, that's great for their next contract. And if they want to ask for a certain amount of money, these are the games that are going to count for that kind of contract.
I'll leave it with you, sir.
Well,
she's setting the gauntlet up.
Yeah. Well, you look at the remaining games, it's pretty much a split road in half and home games. So it's an uphill battle. I mean, they're coming home, and it's not going to get easier by any stretch. So the term must win is overused. It really is. But they're getting to that point where you're taking the ability to control somewhat your destiny out of your hands. And when teams aren't able to take care of their business, that's when we see the wild stuff happen. Some team goes on a run, and all of a sudden teams start to drop out, and your position changes because you're not controlling what you can control. So they're in a position now where it might not be must win, but it's must control your own destiny to the extent that you can at this juncture with only 15 games remaining.
Only a half game up on Washington as of right now, so things are changing moment by moment. But right now, we got to check in with Coach. Here's Nick Nurse postgame.
It was probably, it wasn't the greatest defensive effort in the world, but it was pretty good, right? It was pretty good, and I just didn't think, again, offensively, we made enough. I know at the half, I think we were something like 11 for 31 or 2 from in the paint. Like, not bad shots. They aren't point blankers, but they're pretty good space, 8 to 10, 6 feet. A lot of kind of putbacks that you mentioned. just not going in. I just didn't think we made nearly good enough to keep up with them. Yep.
In the flow of the game, you look at the shots and they don't look like bad ones.
Yeah, there was only, I would say, there was a little stretch. I thought, I want to say it was in the third, Doug. I thought we came down and had good shot. We finally started getting it out from the paint to catch and shoot threes, and then we had 2 in a row that I thought were kind of mid-range, not great actions that didn't go, and that it was kind of back to 5 or 6, and then all of a sudden it was back to like 9 or 11 again after 2, not such good possessions. I mean, we're going to take some of those there, but we certainly got to explore and get an action in there too. But I just think that from in the paint we didn't finish near good enough. Probably a little bit of contact there, but I think that we probably didn't adjust because it seemed like every quarter we were right back in the same situation. Right, and I kind of like the ones where Yak's knocking them down at the end versus the little hand fighting from 16 that gets called continuation. That goes on a lot. But no, that was tough. It was tough. I mean, that's really probably, you look at the 96 to 71 field goal attempts. We don't score enough when we got that many more, right? And then it's 31 to 14 at the free throw line, right? That's pretty tough to overcome.
Coming off the heels of International Women's Day, let's talk about the WNBA fan base in Toronto showing up huge. Mm-hmm. We've got this game coming up on the May 13th, a Saturday featuring Chicago Sky and Minnesota Lynx. Anybody here secure their tickets? You've got your tickets?
I got my ticket.
Okay.
I will be there.
Okay,
I will be there.
VIP sure.
Well, I didn't
the
say
stars
that.
shine, right?
I didn't say that.
Ticket at all?
I have no access as of yet. I'm hoping to get my hands on some tickets, but of course the community showed out. The game is sold out as far as I know at this point now. Let's talk about the fact that professional women's basketball hasn't had an opportunity to show itself here in Canada at this level. Of course, we've had the Global Jam. We've had a lot of international games played here. What is this going to do for the community, Noor, from your perspective, having a WNBA game on Canadian soil here in, I think, the hotbed of basketball right now, even internationally, Toronto?
I think you're seeing right now there's the fan base out there. When I was looking to buy my tickets, I was waiting in line. I don't think I waited in line on Ticketmaster in a very long time. Maybe for Jay-Z tickets or something. Shania Twin tickets, exactly.
Shania Twin? No, Twain.
Not even Twain tickets because the marketing team's working really well over there. But I think based off of that, it's great to see that we're trying to make a mark here for the women of Canada, showing them that there's so many ways that they can be included in the conversation. And for someone like me, I grew up not knowing that women could be a part of the sports realm. As a woman of color, as a woman, I didn't know that this could be something that I could do. And then until I got to see women that were in spaces talking and communicating and having a dialogue and a voice in that realm, that I was like, when I see myself represented, you want to go and be that person, because if they can do it, you can do it too. And if I can do it, the girls behind me can do it as well. So that is so important for our future, our the way that we're going to be going down. If you look at the Canadian women's soccer team, they're better than the men's team over here. So you know that the fan base is here. It's just a matter of bringing that and showing them that.
Couple of girl dads here between myself and Sherman. What does it mean to you?
Representation is big.
Yep.
It's a huge motivating factor, especially for future generations. And there's a lot of learning that goes into this and unlearning that has to happen in order to kind of facilitate growth in areas. And this is one of them, I mean, Noor spoke eloquently about what it does for the young women coming up, but for the young men as well.
Yeah.
There are young men that are going to learn, and they're going to see this, and they're going to understand that there is value. There's something to respect, and you've got to treat it with the proper etiquette and the proper respect that it deserves. So the growth and the learning curve is huge for something like this. And it's just, I don't think our city or our country can get enough basketball.
Nope.
Yeah.
Right? So when you see a WNBA game come to our city, it's a special thing. And it's being supported at the highest level because it should be. And I think it's great. And I think it's just going to continue to fuel optimism about what it can do for young people coming up, because they're the ones that impact change on the highest level. And I think those young people seeing a WNBA game in Toronto kind of like when the Raptors came to Toronto, we've seen the influence of that brand coming here. A WNBA game could have significant impact from that perspective.
All right, right now we're going to check in with the players who do play here in Toronto. That's the Raptors post-game sound coming from LA.
It's a good defensive team there. Thought they did a good job after we got out to a good start of, keying in on us a little bit, making it crowded in the paint, and weren't really able to convert. I thought the free throw was a difference tonight. The free throw line was a huge disparity there. And they just made everything tough on us. So I would give them a little bit of credit. We definitely got to execute better. And when you want to beat the top teams, you gotta execute at a high level. They come to see the players, and I think we're losing a little bit of the fabric of what the NBA is and was, and it's been disappointing this season. You could look up most of my texts this year have been with Ben Taylor officiating. So at a certain point as a player, you feel it's personal, and it's never a good place to be. That's not why we lost tonight. We got outplayed, but it definitely makes it tougher to overcome.
Too much time on it.
I'm here now.
Did you think you called it a bullshit tech? Did you think you said anything to earn that, or do you think it's whatever lingering?
I think that there's been certain times this year where I feel our team is getting consumed with the way the whistle's going, especially after the night we just had in Denver, the way that finished. So there's a couple calls early that we all disagree with, and if I say to my team, "Come on, guys, let's keep playing through," and that warrants a tech, I think that's a little bit crazy.
I'd say sometimes we run out of gas, sometimes miscommunications, tough buckets. Momentum swing. They're a good team too, so you can't, I don't want to take any credit from them, but I do think that sometimes, the lack of focus that we show sometimes is, catching up on us at the end of the games.
What do you mean by lack of focus, in what areas?
Well, sometimes, at the end of the day, we play, we're a really hard team, and sometimes the ball don't bounce your way all the time and all, but sometimes it's just, a foul, a tic-tac foul that, we could be in better position or whatever. And, at the end of the day, it start costing us a lot when they're at the free throw line. So, yeah, they've been dealing with injuries and all, so I guess. But you could see, obviously they got a lot of firepower, and, Kawhi, a great defender. Paul George could be a good defender. They got Norm coming off the bench. Zubac, a good, center. You could go down the list of the guys that they have. So, they could definitely, make a run for themselves. It's a really good team.
Okay, coming up next for the Toronto Raptors, a matchup with the LeBron-less Los Angeles Lakers, who are currently tied with the Utah Jazz for that last play-in spot. And without LeBron, people already questioned whether or not Anthony Davis was still that dude. Obviously, things not going his way this season with a lot of ticky-tack injuries, I'm going to say, like light injuries that people think, guys turned into Mr. Glass, the nickname that goes on the internet. But the question I have for you is, now that LeBron's gone the last 3 games, averaging about 35 points in 35 minutes, how do you stop him knowing that he is the focal point of this offense and kind of getting the shots he wants? Noor, I'll start with you.
I think you kind of have to give him the Jokic treatment. The Raptors are pretty good at this, where they understand. And I think Nick Nurse actually loves stopping the other team's best player. That's like his bread and butter. He goes to sleep thinking about it, I feel like, every single night. So for him, it's a matter of how do you stop, in this case, Anthony Davis and limit him. And I think actually over the 3 games the Raptors had on the West Coast, but the Nuggets, the Clippers, and now the Lakers, this is a winnable game for them, because as great as Davis has been playing, this is something that you can stop him. The Raptors are healthy right now. They have the defense. They have the right guys to defend him as well. The only problem I see with that team now is, how do the players around Anthony Davis help him once we're stopping him? They did acquire Malik Beasley at the trade deadline, who's a really good 3-point shooter. They have Schroeder there who can pass the ball around. Austin Reeves comes up big. But I think having LeBron not there is something the Raptors have to capitalize on. If he's not there, you got to win this game.
I agree. It's just, I think sometimes it's when other players get opportunities, they tend to screw things up for the opposing team, right? It's hard to game plan for an Austin Reeves that comes into the game and all of a sudden he's making shots and he's making plays, and Schroeder is kind of this jitterbug who's all over the court with his quickness. But D'Angelo Russell might be back as well.
Yep.
And he's a significant piece to the Lakers in terms of a move they made to help them make that championship push. And he can be a difficult person to deal with. But the thing about Anthony Davis that I love is that he impacts the game on both sides of the ball at extremely a high level. And when he does that, he's one of the best players in the league. He's doing that now.
Yeah, finally.
He's back to that. I mean, 22 rebounds the last game. He's doing it in a big way. So the Raptors are going to have their hands full, but physicality is something that the Raptors have. They have an OG Anunoby. They have a Scottie Barnes. They can be physical with Anthony Davis and hopefully take him off of his spots. But it's going to be a challenge because they're playing confidently and they're getting contributions across the roster, and that becomes difficult to defend. But if you're the Raptors, you got to end this road trip on the right note.
Now, you touched on the moves that they made around the trade deadline to improve this roster. D'Angelo Russell, of course, sat out last game but might be back against Toronto Raptors. But Jared Vanderbilt's another guy that's kind of come in, and you talk about guys it's hard to game plan for, getting around 9 rebounds a game. Talk about what he's done as a youthful piece, because I think that's something that this Lakers team lacked was energy and youth.
Yeah, he's an energy guy. He's one of those guys that he's just going to impact the game. He's going to tip a rebound. He's going to dive on a loose ball. He's going to cut to the basket, get an emphatic dunk. He's just got that motor about him with size. So he's another X factor that he can really make things happen. You don't look at his point total to find out how much he's impacted the game. You have to watch the game and you'll see the many moments that he makes a difference doing different things. So a very good pickup, a young player that they can kind of figure out how they want to utilize moving forward. But he's definitely one of those guys who helped this franchise. And don't forget about Rui Hachimura.
Yeah.
I mean, he came in and now he's starting to find his footing, and he's doing a great job as well.
I am a big fan of both, but I love Jared Vanderbilt. What he's doing with the Lakers right now, he kind of reminds me of a better man, Stanley Johnson. He's so quick, and the way that he's moving constantly on the court is what the Lakers need. What they were lacking constantly was that same thing as the Raptors, a very stagnant, slow-moving offense, guys sustaining, waiting for the ball to get to them. But you notice, especially against the Dallas Mavericks, against that game where they made the comeback, he was so crucial. The way he was moving around on the court, his defense on Luka was the reason why they were able to limit Luka quite a bit too. I think Luka went 105 on the field when he was being defended by Vanderbilt. So having a guy like that who doesn't quit on a play, even while they were down 30 points, he was like, bet this is my chance to go in and make an impact. And that's why guys like LeBron, who are going to be the face of the franchise, love having guys like Vanderbilt come off and help the team, because that's an energy boost. And you need that on the court. You need just movement happening.
All right, before we get out of here, I want to give Sherman some runway, because we've kind of talked a little bit on air about Fred VanVleet's love for Ben Taylor. And, of course, like the last 2 games, right, controversial referee calls. Fred mentioned what he thought he got the tech for. Your impression of how Fred's been treated this last game and how these techs have impacted this group as they move forward?
Well, first of all, I love the way Fred handled it. He stood in front of the mic. He didn't try to slide anything in there. He said, I'm going to take this hit, but here's what I have to say. And he said it. And for Fred VanVleet, he did it in a calm way. He was respectfully disrespectful.
I like that.
Right?
Yeah.
And he was very composed about it. So I appreciate the way he said it and what he said. Now he's going to pay the price for it.
He can afford it.
He's willing to do it. But, I mean, they're human.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And there's frustrations that build up. And for a guy like Fred, saying what he said that he said to Ben Taylor, I'm not sure that deserves the tech. I'm not. I don't think it does. If there's no curse words in there, there's no approaching with that kind of physical presence of trying to have a confrontation, no animation to show up the official, I'm not sure that warrants a technical foul. So I'm not saying it's a personal vendetta that Ben Taylor has against Fred VanVleet, but Fred feels something.
Definitely.
And based on what he said, I'm not sure that warranted a tech.
Noor, I'll give you the last word.
Well, I wonder if it is personal, because I saw a stat this morning, and it was like Fred VanVleet has played a game where Ben Taylor has been reffing. I think it's been 4 of those so far this season. He's gone a tech in 3 of those from Ben Taylor himself, personally. So it's like, at what point as a player do you start to wonder, what's my game going to look like when I'm being reffed by this one guy who might not be giving me the fair whistle constantly? And that does something to your psychologically, does something to you just playing on the court. And Fred's a great guy, and we're glad to have someone like that who's a leader, who's not going to let noise like that bother him. And I'm glad he spoke up the way he did. I think when he was speaking up, he knew he was going to make every cent of that fine worth it. And I'm going to say, I'm sure the city of Toronto, the country of Canada, is going to be right behind you. You can fill out your tab if you need to, because things like that need to be talked about. He's fine.
He's good.
He's okay paying that off himself for sure.
But to Noor's point, listen, I've gone to games when I've seen the officiating crew, I know I'm going to have a problem.
Yeah.
And that does impact your approach. It impacts your energy. It impacts your psyche. You fight through it, but it does have an impact. And when you have that official that you know you have an issue with, it just kind of, it messes with you.
The Toronto Raptors take on the Los Angeles Lakers Friday night, 10:30 on TV on TSN. Catch the Radio Call on Sportsnet 590, and we'll see you guys next time. Peace.